Darren McGarvey, Loki, whose book Poverty Safari, Understanding the Anger of Britain's Underclass, has been nominated for the Orwell Prize.
I don't doubt that the ethical concern that people who want to restrict abortion have is genuine. But if one ethical concern is for consideration, then you have to consider all other ethical concerns too. And when you follow restrictive abortion laws to a logical conclusion, it crosses so many other ethical red lines that it begins to fall apart. One thing that I do find quite ironic about this, uncomfortably so, is that you have a lot of people on the right who are all about the sanctity of human life as long as it's a fetus. But have a lack of concern for the sort of society that waits for that child when it grows up.
What's your view about Northern Ireland and women in Northern Ireland?
My view is just as I've explained. My view is that people on the right, whether it's the DUP, whether it's Theresa May's government, I think that people are just being a bit glib around this issue generally, and that ultimately, if we're going to protect the sanctity of life, then we have to consider what happens when that life begins to mature. And rather than creating a hostile environment for people to live in Britain, then we should be thinking about the sanctity of life as it develops.
But do you think Northern Ireland should have a chance to decide this issue, or that Westminster should, or that Theresa May should?
Apologies. Obviously, I think it's funny that sometimes they pass the hot potato back to the devolved government when it's a tricky decision, but in Scotland, then it's like, no, we're just going to decide whether you're having a referendum or not. I think that the growth report that's been published in the last few days, which has been hotly contested, performs a number of functions.
Just to explain for English viewers, this was about Scottish growth and the Scottish economy.
Yes, that's right. Yes. I forgot that this isn't news down in England, isn't it?
No, it's not. I'm not
Funny
sure how much...
I believe in independence because I believe in taking responsibility.
You want to
and we're not responsible for economic growth until we're in charge of our own employment law and immigration, so it's not technically true what you said there, although I understand what you're getting at.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, briefly.
Well, the report, which I hadn't read all 350 pages, but the report...
It's riveting stuff, mate.
Scotland this month increased the minimum price of alcohol as a way of tackling alcohol addiction. Darren McGarvey.
I had a feeling I was going to get that question.
Why was that?
That's OK, don't worry about it. I've got a great answer for you. I've got a great answer.
Chose you at random.
So, yeah, totally. So, anyway, the minimum pricing is something that I supported. I supported it because I have experience of alcoholism, I have experience of living in those conditions, and the threat of financial ruin and just the kind of tally of the money that I was spending on it is one of many factors that does force some people to consider the cost of alcohol in their life. If you think about minimum pricing, it exerts an additional drag force over some drinkers. So, like someone who's driving down the street in a car, it's not just their foot in the pedal that stops the car, it's the friction of the road on the tyres, it's the red light, it's the social stigma attached to getting points in your licence. And so this is an additional force that may correct or rehabilitate some people's behaviour. Now, what we need to consider is the fact that it may not make a massive difference to some people's lives, but even just moderate reductions in the amount that people consume, even just drinking 2 pints less a month, they really begin to stack up culturally. Now, does minimum pricing solve all of the problems around alcoholism? Absolutely not. And the Scottish Government have assured us that it's part of a raft of measures. So I think now we really need to be asking them, OK, what are we doing to tackle child poverty? What are we doing to tackle the conditions of stress that give rise to addiction and alcoholism and dysfunction in the first place?
So that would be your better... would that be your better way or just an additional way?
It's just an additional way. I recognise it's a bit of a more politically easy short-term solution to do this now, but ultimately you're going to have to not just look at the current drinking culture, but minimum pricing kind of does address as well that children growing up in this culture now, their attitudes to alcohol might be different if the cost is different.
3 weeks ago, you could walk the streets of Perth, go in, get a lost leader, a decent bottle, a decent litre of whiskey for £15. It's now 20.
So he has to just put up with paying 25% more if that's the figure.
Yes, he does. He does. Sorry, pal, but you do. Because... a fiver. Come on, man. I know politics. politicians have got to have a kind of practice reverence for the audience and all that, but I'm one of you, so I don't. For me, then, if you look at the cost-benefit analysis for the NHS, which you're saying the money should have been put into, then you're talking tens to hundreds of millions over the span of 10 years, with people not presenting drunk, people not turning up with their faces slashed, and every single person who doesn't turn up at a hospital with some sort of injury or problem, that's also having a ripple effect in the lives of their children and in their community, and all of these things begin to accumulate.
We hope.
No, but there's no one else to compare it to, because this is something that, commendably so, the Scottish Government has decided to try when there's not a lot of examples of anyone doing it, so we're the first to do it. So if you look at I urge everybody out there to look at some of the research conducted by the University of Bristol, and it makes for striking reading. Now, I recognise there is a nanny state issue, and I think that's a legitimate concern for people to have. But what I also know is alcoholism's a very subtle thing, and a lot of people drink more than they think they drink, because we all are in denial about these things. And actually, a lot of people, what you hear them saying is, this isn't going to do anything to stop real Jakeballs, but it's costing me a lot of money.
OK.
And it's like...
All right, you've made the point.